Hi there, thank you so much for joining me today. My name's Natasha, welcome to my channel. This video is going to be a finale for an eyeshadow rotation project pan that I started at the beginning of this year. This was originally supposed to be a project that I did every month for the rest of 2022 for the entirety of the year, but I have just done some thinking and I don't think this project pan is doing what I originally wanted it to do, and for lots of reasons, I just don't feel like I should continue with the project. So this is actually my final update, and I'll just go into more reasons later on. Let's start with the palettes that I was focusing on in April. And I chose two springy palettes that I thought would complement each other really nicely. I started with the Tarte Make Believe in Yourself palette. This has a lot of gorgeous, lighter, more colorful, springy shimmers. I also focused on the Limoncello palette from ColourPop. This also has some beautiful springy shimmers, but it has a lot of really nice mattes too that I thought would complement the shimmers from the Tarte palette as well. Both of these palettes I used 7 times, and I was able to use every shade 1 time, but I did not use any of the shadows 5 times like I originally had hoped that I would. And that is just one of the several rules that I created for the project that I just never was really able to comfortably hit. And I just feel like with most of my project pans, with the exception of the Partners in Cream project, I feel like I've created too many rules, and that used to be something that really motivated me and helped me keep going, but nowadays I just don't. I feel constricted by them. It's changed my view of this type of project pan from something that's really fun and something that challenges me in a good way to just being like another thing I have to do. So let's start with the Tarte palette. I did use all of these shades at least once. Like I said, I used it 7 times. And I originally assumed that the shade Myth, which is the one matte shade in the palette, would be the one that I reached for the most, but I ended up creating a lot more warm looks. This is kind of like a purpley cool toned matte, so I reached for the warmer mattes from Limoncello a lot more. There are so many gorgeous standout shades from this palette. I love it. I am glad that I was able to reach for it a little bit more this month. I don't really have anything left to say. This is a great palette. I'm really glad that I own it. Now moving on to the Limoncello palette, I used this also 7 times. And there really wasn't a shade that stood out to me that I used a ton, but there were, again, some really beautiful shades. Easy Peasy is a really beautiful duochrome. It might even be more than a duochrome because I do think it has multiple shifts. It's got like a red base with like a green and a gold shift. Really, really beautiful. Capri is a gorgeous lime green shimmer. Even Amalfi, like the first time I applied that, I haven't worn a matte yellow eyeshadow in so long, and I wore it in my eyeshadow bingo video and it looked really nice. I was very pleasantly surprised with how good it looked because sometimes yellows aren't really the most flattering shade for me. Even La Festa, which is a matte blue, I'm wearing that today just a little bit, and I don't love blues. Like, that's not the shade I'm gonna go for first. I don't think it's the most flattering shade for me, but the 2 times that I used it, I really enjoyed it. I think maybe there's just something in that undertone, like maybe it's just a little bit deeper and maybe not super warm. I don't know, there's something in it that actually makes it pretty flattering for me, which I was not expecting. So I am really glad that I got to play with this palette a little bit more. It's one that I really love the packaging for, and part of me feels like maybe I only purchased it for the packaging, but having played around with all of the shades a little bit more, it has reinforced the fact that I do really like this palette, and I'm glad I own it. I do have 5 looks to share, one of them being the one I'm wearing today, and I wanted to talk really quickly about this one as like the first look, but then I have 4 that I can talk about after that. So I used both of the palettes to create today's look. To start, I put a tiny bit of Semifreddo, which is that matte sort of neutral brown. I put the teeniest bit of that in the crease just to create a little bit of depth. And then I started with Crystal, which is a really interesting, like it looks like it's going to be cool toned in the pan, but has a little bit of a gold flip to it. And I put that on the very inner corner and then up into the crease and blended it a little bit. And then I took Mystic, which is the lighter of the 2 blues, put that on the center of the lid. And then I took La Festa, which is that matte blue, and I tapped on that on the outer third, and then put Dream, the darker blue, on top of it. And then I might have gone back in with La Festa and added a little bit more. I wanted to keep it subtle and really flattering. Like, I know that's not very in-your-face blue. It's like a very subtle take on it, but I just wanted something that would be flattering for me, and I think that that really worked. And then to finish the look, I took Touring, which is this shimmery light gold, and I put that on the inner corner, and then I also put a little bit on the lower lash line just to brighten that up a little bit. Added a liquid liner and some mascara, a more brown lip, and that's like my wearable take on a blue look. Someone in the comments had mentioned that they'd love to see the blues from both palettes used together in a look, and this is my version of that. And now for the other 4 looks, I'm going to start with the one that I created with each individual palette, and then I have 2 looks that I created with both palettes. So for look number 1, I only used the Limoncello palette, and I added the swatches of the shadows just so you could get a better idea of like what the actual shadows look like instead of just the name. So I started with Easy Peasy, which is that beautiful duochrome shade. I put that all over the lid, and then I tapped Capri, which is that lime green shimmer, on top of it just to add even more of a green flip, and I think that looked really nice. Those look beautiful together. And then I used the Grotto, which is a reddish darker matte. I used that on the outer third and on the lower lash line a little bit, and then I used Serenade, which is the gold shimmer, and I used that on the inner corner. And this is a really beautiful, like really warm look. This is me using the palette for probably the first or second time of the month, and I knew I wanted to incorporate Easy Peasy. That's the shade that always catches my eye first. So I'm glad I was able to make a look that I really loved with that shade in particular. And then on my lips, I'm wearing a tinted balm from e.l.f. It's in the shade Black Cherry. It's more of a sheer formula, but it does have a little bit of color, and I like that it kind of deepened my lip color a little bit, but still made it very wearable. For look number 2, I used the Tarte palette, and I think I wanted something that was a little bit more neutral that day. I wanted something that was a little bronzy, maybe a little bit more like just something maybe more basic and neutral. And so I started with Myth, which is one of my favorite shades from the palette. It's like a purpley matte mauve, and I put that in the crease, and then I took Crystal, which again is that lighter shade that has a surprising golden flip, and I put that all over the lid. And then I took Magic, which is a warmer, darker bronze, and I put that on the outer third to kind of add some depth. Very simple look, but really flattering, and I really like how it looked, and I love the metallics from this palette so much. For look number 3, I used both palettes, but the majority of the shades I used were from the Limoncello palette, and I knew I wanted to use that blue, but I wanted to put it on the lower lash line. I don't know if it's something I've been seeing lately or if it's just what I do when I'm trying to wear like what I consider to be like a harder to work with color. Like, I'm not going to throw that blue all over my lid. I don't think that's going to look great on me. For some people, it looks fantastic. I'm just talking about my personal preference. So I used La Festa, the blue shade. I put that all over the lower lash line. And then I took Tuscan Fun, which is it's like a warm mid-tone brown, and I put that in the crease. Then I took Vespa, which is a really deep chocolate, cooler tone brown, and I used that to deepen up the outer thirds. I used La Festa, which is that blue. And then I used Serenade, which is a yellowy shimmer, and I put that all over the lid. And I really like the yellow and the blue together. That's a color combination that surprises me how much I like it. A light yellowy gold with that blue I think looks really, really nice. I also used Serenade in the inner corner, and then to kind of punch up that shimmer on the lid, I took Marvel from the Tarte palette and I patted that on top. So it was kind of like a greeny gold shimmer on the lid. And again, I just really, really loved this color combo. The yellows, the greens, the blues, that all together this past month has been a really, really fun color combo that I've been loving trying out different ways of wearing. And then on my lips again, I'm wearing Black Cherry from e.l.f. I feel like this was a shade I reached for often when I was creating looks with these palettes because it's a slightly deeper color, but it's still very wearable. Like, I'm not wearing like a matte brick red lip. I'm just wearing a tinted lip balm with a little bit more color just to add some depth and some balance to the lighter shades that I'm wearing all over my eyes, especially more colorful lighter shades. For look number 4, again, I used both palettes, but I used 2 shades from each palette. From the Limoncello palette, I used Semifreddo, which is a warmer mid-tone brown. I used that in the crease. And then I used Touring, which is again that light gold shade, the shimmer. And I used that on the inner corner. And then from the Tarte palette, I started by putting Trance, which is a gorgeous, gorgeous shimmery taupe shade. It's light enough, but it's got like a lot of dimension to it. It's gorgeous. You can make it pull really warm or really cool depending on what you pair it with. So I put that all over the lid in the crease, and then I took Fairy, which is a cooler toned, deeper purple shimmer, and I put that on the outer half of the lid. So it kind of gave it like a silvery purple look all together, and this was lovely. I loved this. And I just paired it with the Pillow Talk liner from Charlotte Tilbury. I just wanted a neutral lip that didn't take away from the look, but kind of just added some balance and completed the look. Gorgeous. I really don't reach for that purple shimmer that often, but it's beautiful, and I need to definitely reach for it more because it just really transformed the look. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about what didn't work for me for the project, but I do think it's important to reflect and share why I'm abruptly creating a finale for it when it was something that was supposed to go on for the rest of the year. A big part of it is I just had too many eyeshadows to focus on every month. This month I only had 22 shades, and even that I struggled to reach for every single one of them at least once. And having like such a broad but still specific set of shadows that I had to reach for at least once, it was just hard to keep track of what I'd already used and what needed to still be used, and it just added too much work to getting ready in the morning. And I think in general, I just have too many eyeshadows. There's no way I could properly focus on every single eyeshadow that I own within 1 year's time. It's just not feasible for the size of my eyeshadow collection. Which again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but if my goal is to reach for and get use out of and really understand every single eyeshadow in my collection, it's gonna have to be a longer term project that goes past a year's time. Also, I just have been really busy with lots of other aspects of my life, all in good ways, but it's just really taken the fun out of spending a lot of time getting ready to do makeup in the morning. Sometimes I'll still do a full face, but I won't wear any eyeshadow, and eyeshadow is always the first thing to go if I'm running behind. And so whenever I would do a face of makeup but not wear any eyeshadow, I would kind of feel guilty because I knew that my numbers weren't going to be as good for that month to share, and I knew that I was going to have to do something more intricate or wear even more eyeshadows later on just to kind of make up for not reaching for enough eyeshadows in that day. And so my feelings around playing with my eyeshadows wasn't coming from a place of like, oh, I can't wait to play around. It's more like, okay, how do I check all of these off? How do I get at least one use out of every single one? So it was just turning into a chore instead of a chance for me to really focus but still explore each palette individually. Another one is that I had plans to pair 2 eyeshadow palettes that would go together throughout the rest of the year, and I would kind of make it more appropriate for whatever season I'm in or the type of color clothes that I would be wearing. And I ended up decluttering 2 palettes and bringing in a new palette from Lethal Cosmetics, which is 12 shimmer shades, 1 matte and then 11 shimmer shades. All I wanted to do was dip my fingers in this. I've had this palette for like a month, but I knew that if I spent a bunch of time playing around with this, then I would be neglecting the palettes in my project pan, and it was just, you know, not creating a conducive environment for me to just enjoy what I have. A lot of my content is based around being mindful with what you bring in and just being smart about what you have and getting as much value and contentment and excitement out of what you already own. That's always been something that I've focused on, but I still like to try new things. I still enjoy makeup as a hobby, and the entire point of keeping a curated collection and making sure I'm being smart about what I bring in and making sure I'm smart about using what I have already, the whole point of that is so that I don't feel stressed out. I don't open all my drawers and feel overwhelmed with what I have. And so even though I do spend a lot of time, a lot of my spare time tracking and making spreadsheets and creating content and talking about it, at the same time, I don't want my makeup to take up more of my mental capacity than it should. It should always be fun. That should always be what it is at the end of the day. I like to quantify things. I like to look at things in different ways. That's something that I enjoy, which is why I do it. I don't want to spreadsheet everything into the ground. I don't want to overanalyze to the point where it's not fun anymore. That's not the point of this at all. So in May, for the month of May, for the rest of May, I'm going to use the eyeshadows that excite me. I'm going to try to make a better effort to reach for my eyeshadow palettes more. I'm gonna have to find another way to do that, because doing everyday makeup drawers every month, doing a palette rotation project, those types of avenues I've tried and they haven't worked for me. So I'm just gonna have to find another way to more organically rotate through my products and make sure I'm using all of my eyeshadows as much as I want and being able to play with color and create new looks. I'm not sure. I'm considering going back to the Pan Those Eyeshadows project, because that was a chance for me to be creative and try new look and color combinations, but I still had a goal of hitting pan on most of the shades, and having that goal gave me a drive and a motivation to participate in it more without creating as much pressure on myself to use everything once, etc. So it still had the motivational factor and I still was hitting goals, but it didn't feel like a chore. It didn't feel like something I was forcing myself to do, and it didn't stress me out. So I'm not sure where I'm going next. I'm not sure what the next step is. I'm also taking a step back from the hit and switch project pan. I'm not gonna do a finale for that. That was just way too many photos. That was way too many products I was tracking at any given time. And it was just really difficult to keep track of everything. And I always got really stressed when I had to prepare to make that video, because I had to keep track of all the photos and the timelines, and it was just way, way too much. I bit off way too much more than I could chew. I don't think I said that right. And so I'm gonna keep the Partners in Cream project pan because I love that project pan, and I think that the way it's set up is really great. I'm not focusing on too many products at once. They're products that I use regularly and enjoy, and I don't feel like any portion of that project is a chore. Even preparing and taking photos and weighing those products, like preparing for those videos, is a process that I still enjoy. So I'm gonna keep that project, and I'm gonna have to figure out a way to reevaluate panning, what panning looks like for me moving forward. Anyway, I apologize if you were really invested in this project and you really enjoyed it. Things just kind of changed for me mindset wise, and it turned into something that I wasn't loving and enjoying anymore. And even though I do try to create content that people want to watch, I always have to make sure that I'm creating content that I enjoy working on. I don't have any next steps. I don't have a plan. We're just gonna see how things go. I have a lot of ideas for videos that I wanna make that aren't project pan related. They're still makeup related, but they're not panning related. So I really hope you enjoy that type of content that's gonna be coming out in the next coming months. Like I said, I'll still have the Partners in Cream project, and I will try to figure out some other type of project pan. I just don't know what that's gonna look like yet. So please, thank you for your patience ahead of time. Anyway, I've been talking for way too long. I'm gonna let you go. Thank you so much if you stayed this long into my ramble session. I really appreciate you watching, and please stay tuned for the project pan plans that I have in the future. But in the meantime, that's everything I have. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.